はい、皆さん、こんにちは。米国特許セミナーパテントターミノロジーです。このシリーズでは、特許用語、表現などをできるだけ分かりやすく解説しています。講師は、米国特許弁護士であるブライアン・エプスタインさんです。はい、今回は、接続部をどう訳すかについてと、プロブレムという単語を使うべきかということについて見ていきたいと思います。ではまず接続部について、ご解説いただきます。Okay, Brian, so please share your thoughts on 接続部.
Sure. But first, I want to say, oh, hisashiburi desu. 6月に日本に行くとき、たくさんミーティングをしました。でも、僕の旅行は良かった。Sorry, I've been taking lessons and I wanted to show a little bit. So we're going to begin today by talking about setsuzokubu. And this can be translated as connection unit or connecting unit. And of course, we covered unit in session 3 of patent terminology. But the question we got now was why practitioners seem to prefer connection unit over connecting unit. And so this gets into the different ways we construct claims in the United States. So during enforcement, after the patent issues, we follow the plain and ordinary meaning of the claim. Typically, this scope is broader than countries like Japan. We also have a law that limits some claims to cover the corresponding structure in the specification. This is 35 USC section 112F, and this scope is similar to countries like Japan. And when we talk about these claims that invoke 112F, we commonly call them means plus function claims or MPF claims. And for our more advanced viewers, that would include step plus function as well. And if we look at, so now turning to prosecution as opposed to litigation, according to MPEP 2181-1, a non-structural term like unit is presumed to invoke 35 USC section 112F. And so setsuzokubu probably will be interpreted as this kind of means plus function element. But still, we really need to decide which translation to use.
はい。この接続部というのは、コネクションユニットまたはコネクティングユニットと訳されることが多いんですが、実務家の間ではこのコネクションの方が、好まれると。でこれはなぜかというと、米国ではこの2つのクレーム解釈の方法があるということが原因になっているということです。で一つはこの平易で通常の意味ですね。plain and ordinary meaning での解釈。でもう一つは112条 F 項に基づく解釈です。後者はいわゆる means plus function の解釈で、接続部が明細書の対応する要素に限定されるという解釈方法です。はい。で、まずこのユニットというのは、非構造的な単語のため、112条 F 項が適用される可能性が高いと。したがってこの接続部も、112条 F 項に基づいて解釈されるということでした。これについては、セッション3をご覧ください。で、これ続きがありまして、これが次の解説になります。Okay, next slide, please.
Sure. So because connecting is a verb, it is more difficult to argue that the phrase connecting unit is structural. this doesn't mean an argument that connection unit is structural is likely to be successful. It just means it's slightly more likely to be successful. And because connecting is a function, opponents such as, accused infringers, or, during prosecution, maybe this is your examiner, have a stronger argument that the means also performs a function of connecting. So, for example, if a claim recites connecting means for communicating, arguably this means performs two functions, one of communicating and one of connecting. That's all.
はい、ここまでをまとめますと、このコネクティングというのはこの動詞のため、このコネクティングユニットが構造的要素だと主張するのは、難しいということでした。そして、コネクティングはもう機能でもあるため、このコネクティングの機能も行うと、相手方に主張される可能性もあるということでした。はい、次に行きたいと思います。Please go ahead.
Sure. So the recommendation for Setsuzokubu is connection unit. But in some cases, please consider using the word connector for a physical connection unit. And the reason I'm kind of pointing to using this in a physical sense is that in the context of pure software, it sounds a little strange to talk about something being a connector. You wouldn't call a network card a connector, really. That kind of sounds strange. In addition, I guess there's a theory of translations in which sometimes words are translated, one Japanese word to one English word, or in any language. And these are somehow, or sometimes considered more accurate. Of course, there's another school that says that's not the case, but some applicants will have policies where they want one Japanese word to be translated to one English word. And of course, in that situation, we want to be respectful to our applicants. There, we'll want to use something like connection unit instead of one word like connector. どうぞ。
はい。ここまとめますと、この接続部にはこのコネクションユニット、コネクションを進めるということでした。でその他に物理的な接続部に対しては、コネクターを検討することもできるということでした。ただこのコネクターにしますと、この接続部のこの部が訳されていないため、この厳密な蓄語訳ではないかもしれないということでした。これは翻訳者目線のアドバイスでした。はい。では次に行きたいと思います。Next slide, please.
Sure. So now let's look at mondai. So this phrase is often translated as problem. And an applicant requested a translator to not use this term in a specification in the mechanical arts. And so the question we received was why? And I'm not really sure what is the problem with translating mondai as problem. However, my guess is this problem solution consideration that we'll discuss on the next slide. So problem solution is an approach that is originally an aspect of European patent prosecution. I'm obviously unqualified to comment on EPO practice, so I can only comment on potential USPTO concerns. But that's okay because, a lot of applicants use English language translations in many English-speaking jurisdictions, like the USPTO, like the EPO, and like some other English language jurisdictions.
はい、ここからはプロブレムという単語についてですね、これ問題と訳される の訳として使われるんですけども、このプロブレムを名詞書で使わないという出願人がいるということで、これはなぜかということなんですが、このおそらくこの出願人はこの問題解決アプローチというものが念頭にあるのではないかということでした。で、このアプローチはもともと欧州で採用されていたそうなんですが、同じ英語の翻訳文を使う、この米国でも使われることがあるということでした。で、具体的な内容が次になります。Okay, next slide, please.
Sure. So, U.S. obviousness law recognizes problems as giving rise to obvious solutions. And perhaps the applicant, in this case of Mondai, views identifying problems as conceding part of the obviousness inquiry. This was an issue in the In re omeprazole litigation case. Sometimes the invention is in recognizing the problem, right? It's the inventor's contribution primarily is recognizing the problem, and maybe the solution seems obvious, but only in hindsight after the problem itself was inventively recognized.
はい。この米国におけるこの非自明性に関する判例がありまして、それによるとこのプロブレムというがあると、そのプロブレムの解決法との関係で、自明性の問題が起きる可能性があるということでした。で、前日のこの出願人は、プロブレムがこの周知のプロブレムであると認めることで、非自明性の検討においてですね、不利になると考えたのではないかということでした。はい。では次に行きたいと思います。Go ahead, please.
So in my experience, it's unlikely that the word problem is the issue here. Negative past experiences of this applicant, I don't know the applicant. I don't know what experiences they've had, but they're more likely to be based on how the problem was described and where the problem was described. So, for example, was the problem set forth in the background section of the specification, where examiners commonly look for so-called applicants admitted prior art? Or was the problem set forth in the brief summary or detailed description portions of the specification? Were the structural details of the background art particularly detailed in this when the problem was described, right? It's not just the description of the prior art. Maybe the applicant gave a lot of details such that the examiner had an easy time relying on that as a basis for the obviousness rejection, rather than, just a general summary of the prior art before getting into the invention.
はい。このブライアンさんの経験上、プロブレムという単語を使っても、この問題になる可能性は低いだろうということでした。で、前日のこの出願には、苦い経験があったのかもしれないんですけれども、このプロブレムがどのように明細書に記載されていたということをね、考えた方がいいのではないかということでした。はい。では最後のスライドに行きたいと思います。Okay, next slide, please.
Sure. So, should the applicant maintain this policy? It probably doesn't hurt, right? I mean, it's not really necessary. It's not really hurting, but it might create friction for a questionable benefit, right? We're not sure how much this is really going to help, by removing the word problem. It could cause issues with working with new translators or with new in-house staff, or even, people in-house counsel requesting translations and not understanding that this policy exists. And so it's kind of this outlier strategy that, again, I'm not quite sure what the benefit they see is. Should other applicants adopt this policy? I would caution against it. It's probably not worthwhile. Again, the issue probably isn't the word problem. The issue in terms of, receiving unfortunate office actions or rejections is probably based more on what's being described and where it's described rather than, a magic translation of the word mondai. But again, I'm just a U.S. attorney. Maybe the answer changes in European patent practice or some other jurisdiction, or if you are some or work at some large company where you're filing in multiple jurisdictions, and you want to use one English translation for everything, and again, maybe the European concern dominates. And it's, the US application gets swept up along with it. どうぞ。
はい、で、このプロブレムに関するこのポリシーを、維持してもこの問題はないだろうと。しかし何らかの、圧力を生むかもしれないと。そしてそれに、意味があるのかはちょっと疑わしいということでした。で、タノシスガ人はこのポリシーを採用すべきかということだったんですけども、おそらく採用する意味はないのではないかということでした。ただしこれはあくまでも米国の話で、欧州ではまた話が違ってくるかもしれないということでした。はい。今回はこれで以上になります。ご質問や扱ってほしいトピックなどがありましたら、YouTube のコメント欄に書いていただくか、スライド最後に記載のメールアドレスまでお気軽にご連絡ください。では本日もありがとうございました。失礼します。
ありがとうございました。